Bernie Sanders has not only been rising in the polls, but if you look at some of the early states like Iowa and New Hampshire, he's performing incredibly well. In fact, he's tied with Biden in some of these polls. Now, the establishment-minded folks first pretended like they were ignoring Bernie, didn't take him seriously. But now, considering the fact that he's outraised all of his opponents in the Democratic side, obviously, and he has the most small dollar donors than anyone else on the Democratic side, establishment Democrats are starting to panic. And that is noted in various pieces, but I'm gonna focus on the Associated Press and Politico. Now, the Associated Press reported, establishment-minded Democrats are warning primary voters that the self-described Democratic Socialist would struggle to defeat President Donald Trump and hurt the party's chances in premier House, Senate, and governor's races. Less than a month before Iowa's kickoff caucuses, the doubters are being forced to take Sanders seriously. So they obviously should have taken him seriously from day one. They should have taken him seriously since the 2016 election, when he was able to close this massive gap between himself and Hillary Clinton. He was an unknown politician from Vermont, but it was his policies, it was his vision that inspired voters to rethink what could be in this country, right? And so if they didn't want to take him seriously, that's on them. But what I'm more concerned about is, now that they do take him seriously, what kind of games are they gonna play to try to crush him? And he's been incredibly resilient so far. I have a lot of faith in him. However, I also know that the corporate arm of the Democratic Party is rather vicious, and they'll stop at nothing to smear someone.
The frustrating thing we've seen over the past couple of weeks, all these articles where they look at his polling and they say, oh my God, he's performing pretty well. They'll look at the general election polling showing him doing well, especially in some of the states that Hillary Clinton lost against head-to-head against Donald Trump. You can't look at his fundraising and not be impressed by that. But they've only moved so far. They've moved far enough to, hey, Joe Biden or whoever that's more in their lane, you need to be worried about this, but not to. And maybe that means something. Maybe the fact that Sanders is doing so well actually represents something about the potential Democratic voters in a general election. Maybe it says something about, man, if we really want to beat Trump, maybe this is the guy to get behind.
Yeah,
they can acknowledge all these factors, but they can't acknowledge what it represents. All they can see is that it's an obstacle to Joe Biden.
Absolutely, look. They recognize that there is something that really resonates with Democratic voters and independent voters, by the way. The only problem is what he represents conflicts with what their donors want. And I think that's the main reason why they push back against him so aggressively. Every argument that you've heard from establishment Democrats against Bernie Sanders is easily debunkable, right? And oftentimes doesn't even make any sense. Their argument is, oh, he's so to the left that he would have no chance in the general, even though after the 2016 election, polling indicated that he was the most popular politician in the country, okay? And there are Trump supporters who said they would have voted for Bernie Sanders. So they ran Hillary Clinton. She lost to Donald Trump. What makes them think that this time around, someone who is arguably worse than Hillary Clinton. I mean, look at Joe Biden and not only his record, but what he's running on today. What he's running on today is, I'm doing nothing for you. I'm not gonna change anything, right? And anyone who dares to question him about that, he responds in a combative, angry way.
Yeah, he comes at you like your corn pop. It's like, whoa, calm down, Joe.
Right, exactly. And so what makes them think that he's a more viable candidate as opposed to Bernie Sanders? The truth is they don't even believe that, but they need to appease their donors, and that's really at the heart of this. So let me give you more. And it goes beyond donors as well. I mean, they're thinking about their own careers, their own ambitions, and are they likely to get positions in Bernie Sanders' administration?
Change your tune fast, maybe.
Let me just tell you, Neera Tanden is not gonna be in Bernie Sanders' administration.
You don't think so?
And she's still real salty that Hillary Clinton lost because she, lost out on a cushy job in the White House, which is a great thing. So let's move on to some of the specific statements, okay? Failed Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel jumped in on this and said, "You need a candidate with a message that can help us win swing voters in battleground states. The degree of difficulty dramatically increases under a Bernie Sanders candidacy. It just gets a lot harder." No specifics. How? Why does it get harder? If he is able to outraise all of the other Democrats with small dollar donations, he has more individual donors. He's not funded by super PACs. He doesn't, average donation is $18. He's outraised every single one of them. So what makes you think that he doesn't have a shot at beating Trump?
They don't have to say, unfortunately. You know, everybody, I think it was the Washington Post, everybody's passing around that I'm a Republican and I think Democrats should give me someone I'm comfortable voting for, that op-ed that just came out. And a lot of people read that headline, they're like, who is that for? Oh, it's for Rahm Emanuel. It's for someone who actually still believes that strategy would work. Yes, to get swing voters, you need a centrist, like Hillary Clinton, because it worked. It worked really well in 2016.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. No one believes this. No one believes the arguments that they're making.
By the way, and he worked for Obama. Obama was the guy who was trying to present himself as far more left than he was. And Obama won in states that Hillary was incapable of. So even on his face, even if he believes that secretly you should campaign as a leftist, but then actually like rule as a centrist, he can't pretend that he doesn't understand the appeal of running a left campaign because he's seen it work in practice.
100%, exactly. I mean, Obama certainly presented himself as a bold progressive. Now, part of the problem was he didn't have much of a record as a senator that people could refer to see if he was telling the truth. And look, 2008 was very different. People were desperate to get rid of Bush and Bush era-like policies. And so John McCain wasn't a likable candidate at that time, and people took a chance and really believed Obama's messaging. But now, I just think the electorate's different, and they're looking for records, they're looking for evidence, they're looking for receipts, and they want detailed policies.
Yeah.
So let me give you more. I'm gonna skip ahead and talk a little bit about what these Sanders critics originally thought with Elizabeth Warren in the race. And I love this part of the story because it was exactly what we predicted, right? Cenk and I talked about this a lot on the show. Several Sanders critics noted that he has largely escaped intense scrutiny throughout the campaign. We all know that's untrue. In part because some assumed that Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren, another progressive firebrand, was a stronger candidate who would cannibalize his support. With Warren's candidacy struggling to maintain momentum, however, those assumptions are now being questioned. So they were really relying on Elizabeth Warren to destroy any chance of Bernie Sanders becoming the nominee. But that didn't work because, unfortunately, Elizabeth Warren kind of backpedaled on some of her progressive policy proposals, specifically Medicare for All. I think that really tanked her campaign. Yeah. So maybe don't listen to the centrist advising you in your campaign, because I think the party, meaning the voters, have moved to the left.
Yeah, and I don't think that they predicted, first of all, how many people would be in the primary, but of those people, how that would then shake out in terms of who's taking whose support. You know, it's pretty easy to show that there's at least some overlap between Warren and Sanders, but there's definitely overlap between Biden and some of these other candidates, Buttigieg and things like that, and probably a little bit Warren too. You know, if she does back off some of the bigger, bolder, progressive plans, then she's not gonna lose the more centrist of her supporters. She's gonna drop some people that might go back to Bernie, but she'll still hold on to the people who are probably more likely to vote for Biden if she weren't there.
Yeah, you're right about that. You're absolutely right about that. I think that's what happened already to some extent.
And really fast, I will say, this sort of like candidate like arithmetic is very difficult to do if you actually look at whose second choice is. One of the most mind-blowing things that's been consistent throughout the last year is that generally, like Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, like people generally think of the other candidate as their second choice. I know it doesn't make any sense to people who pay attention hardcore to the news, but a lot of people who like Joe Biden also kind of like Bernie Sanders and vice versa.
Yeah, it is kind of
incredible. Weird. I'm just taking it up with the polls.
There was this conversation that I heard on Michael Brooks's show. This is months and months ago, but it was such a good point that I think we often forget, especially as people who work in the news and we eat this stuff up every day. Look, most Americans who aren't like hyper aware and paying like super close attention to politics and everything that's happening, if you give them a survey on various political issues, it's really like a hodgepodge of all sorts of different things that are inconsistent, right? And so you can't think that all voters are consistent on all issues. People have different life experiences, different preferences, different worldviews. And so, yeah, I mean, look, it might not make a lot of sense to us, but people have different opinions on various policies. So I could see how someone might like Bernie Sanders and then also later support Biden, vice versa. I don't get it, but yeah, people are not necessarily super consistent on the issues. And I wanted to read a quick comment from our members section. I'm Adam Lib says, it's class warfare, period. I think you're commenting in regard to this story, and I think you're right? This is about an economic message that resonates across party lines. That's the thing about Bernie Sanders that I think is incredibly powerful. He talks about how this economy is rigged. He talks about the frustrations and the anxieties of Americans, and we feel it. We feel it every day. Even if you have a stable job and you're not too worried about where you're gonna end up at the moment, we see it around us. We see people living on the streets, an increased number of homeless people. We see people who are dying. Hundreds of thousands of people have already died as a result of the opioid epidemic. Even in my neighborhood, I see people shooting up heroin. And the homelessness problem is serious. Like, we see poverty all around us, and those economic anxieties are real. And while the Rahm Emanuels of the world are not worried about those things because they're sitting up on their ivory towers and they're not concerned about all this stuff, the vast majority of Americans are. And when they hear a politician in a very intelligent and digestible way explain what's happening economically to them and how we can fix it, it's powerful. It's much more powerful than Biden getting angry because someone's asking him a hard question that he doesn't like.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.